Hey everyone, it's Last Protagonist. As you can see from the video title, after playing through the closed network test, I've got some concerns and mixed feelings about Elden Ring Nightreign that I wanted to share for those who feel unsure about picking it up when the full game releases. Before continuing too much further, I should state that we only had half the playable classes available in the network test, and there were a number of other features that weren't fully available, so it's possible the full version of the game will end up feeling more complete than what we were able to play over the weekend. To put things bluntly, although I did have a surprising amount of fun actually playing Nightreign, I'm pretty worried about the longevity of the game. Even after just playing the game for a little over 10 hours, I couldn't help but notice the static map layout with enemies and bosses appearing in fixed locations. Maybe they'll add more variety to the spawn points, but the devs have already gone on record saying they don't have plans to add in additional maps, so if all we're going to get is a fixed version of Limveld, I'm afraid the meta of the game will be solved within the first week of playing the game. To compound things further, if Nightreign is going to be balanced primarily around party play, then if you join into a group without knowing the current game meta, your teammates won't want to coordinate with you, and if you're grouped up with randos, there's just as good a chance that someone else on your team won't know what's going on and hold the team back. I won't sugarcoat it. Trying to communicate with your allies is downright terrible. The best you can do is place a pin on the map and hope your allies will follow you to your destination, though it is nice that someone else can ping your marker to show that they second your decision, and that's it. If you have an upgrade which allows your allies to get healed whenever you use your own flasks, there's no way to tell them to group on me, and if you want to get the most out of Nightrein's co-op experience, you're heavily incentivized to use outside programs like Discord to voice chat with your teammates. Now, I didn't know this, but apparently there is voice chat in the base game of Elden Ring and Nightreign, but so few people know about it, it may as well not even exist because what are the chances that all 3 people in your team are going to be using it? Anyway, it's 2025. It's completely unacceptable for a team-based game to only have one ping available for communicating with party members, and Nightreign should really consider looking at other games like Smite, Overwatch, and Fortnite if they really want players to meaningfully engage with each other. Now, with that being said, there's no way a ping system could do the game justice if you're trying to tell your allies you have an item which might be useful to them, and it felt really bad in general to me that you kind of have to fight over what loot drops in the game. In my very first match, for example, we went to a Firemonk church encampment, and as I was trying to read some of the items which had been dropped, my ally casually walked up and took what I was looking at. This left a really bad taste in my mouth, and I really did not have a good first experience at all the rest of that round due to the team's overall lack of coordination. In some ways, I guess I'd prefer it if there was individual loot rather than group loot, even if that meant we lost the ability to sort of trade gear by dropping things, but it's not like you're going to make really good use of that without voice comms anyway. With the network test being so limited in its scope, we obviously have no idea how the devs intend to onboard players who've never tried Elden Ring, but I really can't imagine what a brand new player's experience is going to be like, and I think Nightrein's gameplay loop is going to be carried hard by a player's previous experiences with FromSoft games. And I'm not saying this to have a particularly doomer take, it's just more of an observation than anything else. Of course, one of the biggest sticking points with Nightreign being a pseudo-live service game is that it'll cost an additional sum of money each month for console players to connect with others via PS Plus or Xbox Live or whatever, and I really think the longevity of Nightreign is going to be hurt by still not having true crossplay between consoles. That's right. If you have a PS5 and one friend has a PC and another has an Xbox, you may as well consider yourselves X-boned out of playing with each other. So with all these hurdles in the way, what are players realistically expected to do? Just group up with randoms and play without comms? Hop into Discord servers and hope to find pugs? Maybe the saving grace will be the single-player form of the game, but I can't really comment on that since I haven't tested it. Again, I can't comment on the final state of Nightreign, but for the network test, we were relegated to staying within the bounds of the roundtable hold while queuing up, so I imagine things can become very boring very quickly if you're forced to idle there for 10 to 15 minutes at a time. At least in the base game of Elden Ring, you can still fight enemies and explore, so maybe you'll be able to do that in the single-player mode of the game when it releases, but I'm apprehensive about it and afraid the roundtable hold will just serve as a waiting room where players watch or play something else on their phones instead. I hate to unleash some forbidden thoughts now, but if they actually add DLC into the game for things like additional maps, would that just lead to fracturing their player base even further like some of the older Call of Duty titles? Honestly, I'm pretty annoyed that the devs initially said they don't consider Nightreign a live service game, yet plans for DLC have already been announced, which just sounds like an excuse to release an unfinished game. As it is right now, Nightreign doesn't feel original enough to feel like a $40 title to me, So for it to release with the foreknowledge that it won't be in a complete state, yet also not be a live service game that's going to have dedicated updates either, it makes it that much more of a hard sell for me. And this is a problem I find myself having with games more and more often these days. Why should I go out of my way to pay full price for a new title released in an incomplete state when I could just wait for it to go on sale when it's in a better state later? But that may be going a bit too far off topic. Alright. So, for better or worse, the gameplay of Nightreign is fundamentally still Elden Ring at its core, but it has a few unique elements in the form of brand new character classes and the arts and skills they can use. The arts and skills are conceptually pretty neat, and they make me more excited for what's to come in future FromSoft titles, but speaking as someone who's played a decent amount of Elden Ring, they also feel a bit gimmicky and tacked onto the game, or that they need further balance adjustments. Toward the beginning of the video, I did say that I had a surprising amount of fun playing, which is true, but I guess I'm just a bit disappointed at how half-baked and lazy the game feels. Sure, the nine-tailed fox, Gladius, is cool, and we're getting a souped-up version of the centipede demon in the Nameless King, but with Elden Ring already being as big as it is, I have to say it feels pretty stale knowing the vast majority of enemies we're going to be fighting are the same trash mobs that populate the vast majority of the base game of Elden Ring. So, things like Banished Knights, Exile Soldiers, Thorn Sorcerers, and Soldiers of God. Bruh. If we're going to get souped up versions of enemies from previous titles, how come we're not getting souped up enemies from previous titles? You know, things like the Lycanthropes from Dark Souls 3, Black Knights, Silver Knights, Bone Wheels, Hollows, or even Pus of Men? Maybe some of this will come with the full version of the game, but first impressions matter, and I've unironically seen some Elden Ring mods like the Bloodborne one have more originality than Nightreign. I was hoping we'd have some more unique weapons, and while it's kind of cool to have some randomization on the skills which appear on some of the loot, literally all of the items we've seen so far, except for the new character's initial equipment, are found in the base game of Elden Ring without the descriptions being changed. I'm not going to wax poetic about the nature of the lore of Nightreign despite the large focus of my channel, but man, I'd be so much more excited for the game if we're able to get things like trick weapons again. It's not all doom and gloom though, and arguably some of the best additions to Nightreign are brand new things like the roguelike power-ups you can get from defeating certain bosses, like the ability to call down lightning onto your position after dodging, or literally summoning falling rain of stars from just walking around the battlefield. Combat can be pretty frenetic and fast-paced, and you're highly encouraged to keep moving and clearing as much of the map as possible before night falls and creeps start coming out. I've got mixed feelings about this though, because it can feel a little too oppressive when you're starting out and trying to get your bearings or interacting with things like merchants, but I imagine it'll become less and less of an issue the more familiar you are with the game. However, the fast-paced nature of the game is probably going to be one of its biggest points of friction. It's one thing to find a safe spot and set the controller down to take a call, answer the door, go to the bathroom, or deal with family, friends, and animals in Elden Ring, but because Nightreign is an online multiplayer game, you have to stay pretty locked in for the entirety of your session. When your character dies, for example, you lose a level and get revived automatically. So if you go AFK and end up dying in the Nightfall multiple times, how enjoyable will it be for you or your teammates if you come back underleveled? Well, I suppose it's better than you disconnecting entirely since teams with empty slots don't get backfilled apparently. And while I think there should be some consequences for your actions, Nightreign is currently missing a number of fundamental quality of life features like vote kicking and backfilling that make it seem like the devs failed to do their homework. Seriously. How do we not have the ability to kick griefers, and how do the devs not have the foresight to know that two griefers working together are going to force a number of players to leave matches early and incur unwarranted leaver penalties? Perhaps I'd feel differently if this is a closed beta with no release date in sight, but with this being a network test and the full version being supposed to release in a little over 3 months, I highly doubt we're going to see substantial enough changes that will alleviate these concerns. It's frustratingly disappointing how half-baked the closed network test feels, because despite my initial apprehension about a battle royale-like FromSoft game, I can actually see potential in the idea after having played it for myself. When push comes to shove, Nightreign is pretty fun for what it is if you actually have a team of 3 to coordinate with, but it feels like a gimmicky cash grab with the barest minimum amount of work put into it to call it a standalone title. I don't think the base version is worth $40, and I'd maybe take it more seriously if it was dropping at $20, since it'd feel more on par with what I'd expect from an indie title, but for the company that produced the Game of the Year to make something as low effort as this for $40 before DLC, it's pretty upsetting. Alright, so real talk. I'm probably going to pony up the $40 to play it when it comes out, since I can justify milking it for some content, but if I weren't a content creator, I'd probably avoid buying it until I saw what all is going to be in the full release of the game, and maybe only if it were on sale at that. So, for you folk who are Elden Ring fiends who spent hundreds or thousands of hours playing the game over and over, the novelty and replayability of Nightreign might be perfect for you, but for you casual Andes, I'd recommend waiting to see what we actually get. I don't particularly like making videos that are this negative, but I'd rather stay true to myself and give you all as honest feedback as I can, and I think it's important to voice your opinion to help push for more positive change. But of course, my opinion is just that, my opinion. So if you agree or disagree with any of my takes, feel free to let me know in the comments. So then, are you thinking of picking up Nightreign when it releases? Are you going to wait to see what state it releases in? Or are you thinking of not picking it up at all? I'd really like to hear about it. Anyway, that's enough for me. Thanks for watching. And special thanks to all my patrons and channel members for your continued support and motivating me to continue making videos like this one. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next one. So until then, take care, stay safe. Last Protagonist out.